Around this time last year, I took a 2003 Suzuki DR200 and raced it at the Glen Helen 24-hour endurance race. I did that in the Ironman class, which is where competitors race solo aboard a single bike for the whole 24 hours. I finished that race on the podium. It's funny because I'm just a regular dude who, at that race, happened to be actually well prepared. I had my eyes set on Ironmanning that race for 2 years at that point. I got myself in the best shape of my life, and even though I raced it on a lowly DR200, I had spent most of that year getting that bike dialed in to suit me perfectly. So I may not have known it at the time, but I was pretty well primed to have good results at that race. But I didn't escape doing that without an injury, and that injury is still an issue to this day. At first, it was hard to accept that I might not be able to do crazy stuff like that anymore, but it only took one event on a bike to help me realize that I can still have exciting accomplishments on a bike, even if I am permanently injured. That ride was Rocky Mountain's 1,000-mile adventure on $1,000 bikes challenge, which they turned into a video series on their YouTube channel. It was a great production, and it was awesome watching it and reliving the stuff we went through on that ride, so I was feeling extra good by the end of binging it, and left a comment saying, "We should do a 24-hour endurance race as a challenge," even though I probably could have been content with never doing another 24-hour race. And I guess somebody saw that and took it seriously, because the next thing I heard from Rocky Mountain was that the guys were out scrambling for endurance race bikes on a $1,500 budget. When it became official that we were really going to do a 24-hour endurance race budget bike challenge, I was obviously excited. I couldn't wait to get out and do a ton of practicing to be as well prepared as I possibly could to help my team win. But we all know how that turns out. Instead of being well prepared, I had time to ride once on the SP500, and I used that time to make a video on that bike. So one practice on a junk bike was all I was going to get, and yeah, that's just how it goes when you have to work and crap, I guess. And the best part was when I did that one ride, it felt like all my strength was gone, and I just felt like a wet, out-of-breath noodle. Another story which seems to be getting repeated on this channel. That is definitely becoming a common theme here. I was in a crap situation with work where I just never had any free time because every time I did have an evening to myself, I'd have to use it to try to get myself unburied from the mountain of endless crap that I had to deal with for the freaking job. So I just accepted that I was not going to be well prepared for this race, and I was going to be extremely out of shape because I wasn't working out either. It sounds kind of sad and lame, but I was hanging on to a little excitement because I was going to get to run an experiment to see what it's like to do an endurance race completely unprepared. I had really been wondering at my other races how much my physical training, nutrition, and other efforts were actually paying off, if they were at all. So the only way to really know would be to stop all of it and race again all unprepared like. And what do you know? This was exactly what was about to happen at this $1,500 budget 24-hour endurance race challenge. It was maybe a month out from the race when I learned exactly what the Rocky Mountain guys were cooking up. It was going to be 2 teams facing off against one another, each team having 2 $1,500 bikes to try to finish the race. From what they told me, it sounded like they had gone out and just bought every cheap 2-stroke in a 500-mile radius and then started working with the ones that were the closest to actually being usable. As far as the team breakdown, they're going to try to have them somewhat balanced. The original lineup was supposed to be 2 riders from Rocky Mountain on each team and 2 guests on each team. One team, Team Hurricane, was supposed to be Wes, Charles, Aiden Kiefer, and myself. The other team, Team Sad Dragon, was supposed to be Eric, Chase, AJ Catanzaro, and the CEO of KTM. The bikes were going to be 2 90s 2-stroke WR250s for Team Hurricane, and what I heard was that Team Rad Dragon had a YZ250 that barely moved, and another bike which was only ever referred to as a safety hazard. By the time we actually met up in California, the rider lineup had changed. Team Rad Dragon had to switch in Kobe Knight from Ride with the Knights as their second guest alongside AJ. So now their team was stacked with not only 1, but 2 of the fastest dudes on Earth. It seemed like that was going to be okay though, because after a day of testing on the bikes, it was clear that this 24-hour showdown was not going to be about the riders, it was going to be about the bikes. There were 4 bikes out there on test day. The 2 WR250s, a YZ250, and a TTR 350 or something like that. I'm not even sure, it was a piece of crap. The YZ and the TTR were both totally unrideable. I'm not kidding. I guarantee they would not have made a single lap at Glen Helen. I promise. So the challenge then became WR250 versus WR250, one on each team. They were not the same bikes though. One of them had suspension that felt pretty aggressive and well sorted out. The other had suspension that just felt broken. The forks on that one that felt broken felt like they didn't have the correct length springs in them or something. There was just nothing providing pressure to top out the travel, so it was heavily sagged in, and then when it would get unloaded and then come back down onto the front wheel, you would feel the forks freely travel for a bit, for 2 inches, and then there was a clunk, and then it felt like there was springs in it again. So yeah, it just felt like the springs just weren't the full length in there. It was weird. Anyway, the one with good suspension just wasn't running perfectly cleanly. Charles and Wes spent the day messing with the jetting and made it better, but it was still pretty bleh. The one with the janky suspension felt very crisp and clean, but didn't have nearly as much power. Wes and Charles, having done all the prep work on both WRs, got to decide which one our team would use, and they decided on the one with the good suspension and strong power with the slightly choppy jetting. The other team had to use the one with funky suspension, mellow power, but clean jetting. The next day was the race. So yeah, we had that one day to prepare, which meant we weren't really prepared. But that was totally okay, because the point was just to race the 2 teams against each other, and both teams were equally unprepared. On race day, our team game plan was basically just to leave Team Rad Dragon in the dust, and we were going to accomplish that by riding the dirt bike really fast. In other words, there wasn't a whole lot of strategy laid out, just a batting order where each of the riders would try to go for 2 or 3 laps before handing it off to the next rider. The laps would take 20 to 25 minutes, so each rider would be on the bike for 40 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. You can roughly round that out to an hour per turn. 24 hours, 4 riders, so 6 turns, each turn being as long as a full works race. Yeah, that is a good test to see if being out of shape actually sucks or not. So Wes started our race off and dang near pulled the whole shot for that starting line. It's a shame we weren't actually racing anyone on that line except for the other WR250, which was being piloted by Chase. Wes took 3 laps and got us ahead of Team Rad Dragon by just a few minutes. Then Aiden hopped on for our team when AJ hopped on for the other team. Aiden took 3 laps and managed to hold off AJ for that whole hour. Then I hopped on and we immediately got passed and left in the dust. So it was kind of turning out looking like it could actually be a back and forth race. As far as my experiment with racing after months of abandoning all semblance of a healthy lifestyle, it felt pretty bad, like significantly shitty, and I wasn't biased in favor of it feeling bad. I was really hoping that it wasn't going to matter all that much, because I wanted to be able to conclude that I can just be lazy and still race. That would be fantastic. But no, it was genuinely bad. I was having arm pump, which is not something that I usually get that bad. I was having cramps, and I kept straight up running out of strength and having to sit on the seat and chill. So that's unfortunate, because that means I need to figure out how to have a health and fitness routine while living out of the 4Runner, and that hasn't been easy when I've tried, but now I am committed to figuring out how to make it work and how to make it actually as effective as what I used to do in the past. On the bright side, I now really feel like all the stuff I was doing before when I was racing every endurance race, it was all working incredibly well. So that gives me some confidence to share what I used to do. I previously went back and forth with deciding if I would get more into the health and athletic performance stuff on this channel, but kind of just concluded that nobody cares, and that's probably true. That is probably very accurate. But after 3 laps at Glen Helen in this condition that I was in, I have definitely been thinking, holy crap, dude, I have the answers to this test, and I better write them down and publish them, even if it's just so that I never forget. So now I will be making it a goal of mine to brain dump what I know about getting healthy and having that athletic ferocity to be able to do this stuff at a competitive level. But that little upside to the situation wasn't going to be helpful at that very moment during that race where I was just sucking. And I still had a whole day left of racing, and we were falling behind the other team, so what did I do? Well, I tried something very basic, which ended up getting me through pretty well. I'm actually very surprised by how well it worked. I just started lying to myself out loud, literally speaking the opposite of what I was feeling. If I felt tired, I would say out loud, "I love how energetic I feel right now," over and over. If I was struggling in a section, "Okay, all good, all good. Yep, all good." And you know what? That was highly effective. I would actually end up doing better just by saying things out loud on repeat. So that's definitely staying in the toolbox from now on. I wasn't the only one who started doing this either.
All right, 2 laps, here we go. I got this. 2. I can do 2 laps. I'm happy to be here. I want to ride a dirt bike. I'm happy to be here. I want to ride a dirt bike. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here.
So there must be something to it. Anyway, back to how the race actually went. We were somewhere between 3 and 4 hours in, which is a ton of racing to have already gone by, but is only a small fraction of the 24-hour race, and that's when I saw Kobe from the other team coasting down one of the big hills. Unfortunately, their WR250 melted the piston rings and dropped dead, but amazingly, by the time I was done with my shift on our bike, they were putting the finishing touches on a top-end rebuild. That is endurance racing for you. You can blow your bike up, and if the team has the will to keep going, you can repair it quickly and be back in the race. And that's what they did. They were out there, racing us again, and they were only an hour behind, which is actually still too close for comfort that early in a race this long. It wasn't long after that when our bike started bogging out on Aiden, so we pulled that in for an air filter change and lost some time. And that was right before AJ hopped on again and started really gaining on us. It was shaping up to be a really close race, but when the sun went down, Team Rad Dragon's light setup was not the best. But ours was decent, and that was a big advantage. There was a lot of drama through the night, from what I was told, because I could not stay awake. I was passed the heck out during the night, and I would just roll out of bed for my turn, do my laps, and pass out again. I was so tired, like just so impossibly tired. I do recall that every time I would wake up and start moving for my turn, I would look at the YZ that Team Rad Dragon was originally going to race, and I would see more and more of it had been stripped away to keep those 2 WRs going. By the time I was on my last shift and the sun had come up, our team was well over an hour ahead once again, and we had room to breathe with the race nearing completion. But our bike was running significantly differently than it was at the beginning of that race, and it was noisy and missing parts, so I was using that as an excuse to go a little easy on that poor thing. In the end, both of the WRs rolled through the finish, totally beat to crap. Our team won the $1,500 WR250 showdown, and ever since then, I've been itching to make content on how I was able to do so well at endurance racing before, because I'm now confident that what I was doing before was really working, because after not doing it for a while, I feel like garbage. So go watch Rocky Mountain's video series on this $1,500 budget 24-hour endurance race challenge. It was pretty entertaining, especially when they were pulling the bikes together. That stuff, that's like my favorite part of those challenges.